Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be tackling something that I know a lot of you out there are interested in, and that is becoming more fluent in English.
It's a popular topic.
It is, and we're going to dive deep into this YouTube video
Okay.
from LEP Learn English podcast, and the title of the video is How to Think and Speak in English. Il's podcast and chill beginner.
And honestly, I was surprised by some of the techniques they suggest in the video.
Yeah, it really does go beyond like the typical advice that you get in a classroom.
Yeah.
I think what really stood out to me was just the emphasis on integrating English into like your daily life, even in small ways.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They
Yeah.
suggest starting by simply thinking about your day in English.
Yeah,
So instead of making a mental to-do list in your native language, try doing it in English.
right.
Have you ever tried something like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems so basic, but it really is like a mental workout for your English skills.
If you can narrate your breakfast routine in your head, okay, I'm pouring the coffee now, time to toast the bread, you're already kind of flexing those English muscles.
Like building a foundation, right? You're
Exactly.
getting comfortable with basic thoughts in English, which can then help you tackle more complex ideas later on.
Yeah, and the video doesn't stop there. They talk about immersing yourself in English content outside of traditional studying.
Yeah, like listening to music and watching movies.
Exactly. Things like reading news in simplified English, listening to English music, watching English movies.
Yeah?
They even talk about strategically using subtitles.
Oh, yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah.
It's not just about passively consuming the content. It's about actively engaging with it.
And that active engagement is where things get really interesting. They
Okay.
strongly recommend speaking out loud, even if it feels a bit awkward at first.
Oh, I can see why some people would be hesitant to do that.
Yeah.
What's the reasoning behind it?
Well, when you speak out loud, you're forcing your brain to work harder. It's not enough to just understand the words. You have to retrieve them, form sentences, and actually produce the sounds.
Right.
It's like taking your English skills to the gym.
Oh, they even recommend things like narrating your actions as you go about your day
Yeah.
or having pretend conversations with yourself. I'll admit I chuckled when I first heard that.
It might sound silly, but it's a surprisingly effective way to get comfortable with the rhythm and flow of spoken English.
Yeah.
It's like building muscle memory for your tongue and vocal cords.
I think a lot of learners get stuck in their heads worried about making mistakes.
Yeah.
But this technique encourages you to just let go and experiment.
And that leads us to another key point from the video, the importance of learning common phrases.
Okay.
Think of it like having a toolbox of ready-made expressions for everyday situations.
So instead of scrambling for words when you're ordering a coffee or asking for directions,
Exactly.
you have these preloaded phrases that just roll off the tongue.
Precisely, it takes the pressure off in those common scenarios, allowing you to communicate more confidently and fluently.
Yeah.
It's like having a cheat sheet for those everyday interactions.
They give some great examples, too.
Oh, yeah.
Things like, excuse me, could you tell me where the nearest? Or, I'd like a latte, please.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're giving you a script for navigating daily life in English.
Yeah, and that sense of preparedness can be a real confidence booster.
Yeah.
The more comfortable you are with these basic interactions, the more likely you are to actively participate in conversations.
Then there's this fascinating technique they call shadowing, which I have to admit I'm really intrigued by.
Uh-huh.
It's almost like becoming an English-speaking echo.
Essentially, you listen to a native English speaker and try to mimic their pronunciation rhythm and intonation in real time.
Okay.
Imagine you're their shadow mirroring their every vocal move.
It's like you're absorbing the nuances of spoken English by osmosis. You're not just learning the words, you're learning how to deliver them with the right tone and inflection.
Exactly, and it goes beyond just pronunciation. You're also picking up on things like stress patterns, pauses, and even the subtle ways native speakers connect words together.
The video recommends starting with short sentences and gradually working your way up to more complex material.
Right.
I imagine finding audio clips at your level is key.
Absolutely. You don't want to jump into Shakespeare right away.
Right.
Start with something that's manageable and build up your skills from there.
But as valuable as these solo techniques are, the video doesn't shy away from the importance of real-life conversation.
Of course.
Would you say that's where the rubber really hits the road?
Without a doubt, you can practice all you want in isolation, but there's no substitute for interacting with other English speakers.
They suggest finding language partners online, joining conversation groups, or even just chatting with English-speaking friends.
Yeah.
It's about putting those skills to the test in a dynamic environment.
And that's where you really start to internalize the language. You learn to adapt to different accents, respond to unexpected questions, and navigate the unpredictable flow of a real conversation.
Yeah.
It's like taking your English out for a test drive.
It sounds a bit daunting, but also incredibly rewarding.
Yeah.
I guess it's about stepping outside of your comfort zone and embracing the challenges that come with real-world communication.
Exactly.
But before we jump into that, there's one more crucial point they raise, and I think it's often overlooked.
Are you talking about reflection?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in like the doing that you forget to step back and assess your progress.
Yeah, it's like hiking up a mountain.
Uh,
You need to pause every now and then, look back, and appreciate how far you've come.
And that's where reflection comes in.
Yeah.
The video suggests keeping a journal in English or even recording yourself speaking to track your progress.
Oh, those recordings can be so eye-opening.
Yeah.
You start to notice patterns in your speech. Like maybe you're always using the same simple sentence structures or struggling with certain sounds.
It's about becoming more self-aware, right?
Exactly.
You're not just blindly practicing, you're actively analyzing your strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah. And from a psychological standpoint, reflection can be incredibly motivating.
Okay.
When you see tangible evidence of your improvement,
Uh-huh.
it reinforces your commitment and fuels your desire to keep going.
Right.
It's like giving yourself a pat on the back for all your hard work.
And speaking of motivation, the video really emphasizes the importance of making the learning process enjoyable.
For sure, it shouldn't feel like a chore.
Right.
Absolutely. They suggest finding ways to integrate your interests into your English practice.
Okay.
So, for example, if you love music, try singing along to English songs, or if you're a movie buff, challenge yourself to watch a film in English with subtitles.
It's like sneaking in a bit of English practice while doing something you already love,
Exactly.
but you're more likely to stick with it if it feels fun and engaging.
Yeah, and it seems like they're big on embracing mistakes.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They encourage viewers to see mistakes as opportunities to learn and grow.
Right.
Everyone stumbles when learning something new. It's part of the process.
I think that's so important. So many learners get paralyzed by the fear of making mistakes.
Yeah.
But the video reframes those oops moments
Yeah.
as valuable feedback.
Uh-huh.
It's like they're saying, go ahead, make those mistakes. That's how you'll learn and improve.
And that mindset shift can be liberating.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing mistakes as setbacks,
Yeah.
you start to see them as stepping stones on your path to fluency.
What really resonated with me was their suggestion to incorporate simple questions into your daily routine.
Oh, yeah. Like, what do you mean?
Give me an example.
Okay, so let's say you're walking down the street and you see a beautiful flower.
Okay.
Instead of just admiring it,
Uh,
you could challenge yourself to think, what kind of flower is that? I wonder where it's native to.
it's like sparking these little internal dialogues in English, even when you're not actively studying.
Exactly. And you can do this with anything.
Oh, wow.
Your surroundings, the news, even your own thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
You're constantly engaging your English brain, making it a more natural part of your thought process.
The video also talks about setting small, achievable goals each day.
Yes.
Instead of aiming for this vague idea of fluency, break it down into manageable steps.
Right. Maybe you challenge yourself to use 5 new vocabulary words in conversation.
Oh.
Or to listen to an English podcast for 15 minutes.
Uh-huh.
It's about creating a sense of momentum and accomplishment, which can be really motivating.
They also emphasize consistency, which I think is crucial for any kind of learning.
Absolutely. It's not about cramming in hours of study every now and then.
Right.
It's about making English a regular part of your daily routine, even if it's just for 15 or 20 minutes at a time.
Those small, consistent efforts can really add up over time. It's like building a house brick by brick. But something that struck me throughout the video was the emphasis on personalization.
Oh, yeah, for sure. What works for one person might not work for another.
Yeah.
The video encourages you to experiment and find what clicks with your learning style and personality.
So some people might thrive in a structured classroom setting,
Right.
while others might prefer a more immersive approach, like traveling to an English-speaking country.
Uh-huh.
It's about recognizing your individual strengths and weaknesses and tailoring your approach accordingly.
It's about being your own language learning scientist, constantly experimenting and refining your methods to discover what works best for you.
And this brings us to a really important point. The journey of language learning is a marathon, not a sprint.
Definitely.
You can't expect to become fluent overnight.
Yeah.
It takes time, effort, patience, and a willingness to embrace the challenges along the way.
Right.
But you know what really resonated with me?
What's that?
It's the idea that language learning is about so much more than just acquiring words and grammar rules. It's about opening yourself up to new ways of thinking, connecting with different cultures, and expanding your horizons.
It's about embracing the transformative power of language and allowing it to enrich your life in countless ways.
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
It's not just about reaching a destination, it's about enjoying the journey and all the discoveries you make along the way.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this part of our deep dive. But
Uh,
before we do, let's take a quick pause and reflect on what we've learned so far.
we've covered so much ground in this deep dive, from simple techniques like thinking in English to more advanced methods like shadowing. It's amazing how many different approaches there are to language learning.
Yeah, it really highlights the fact that there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah,
The key is to find what works best for you and to tailor your approach to your individual learning style and goals.
something that really struck me was the video's emphasis on the importance of just using English as much as possible.
Right.
It's not about memorizing grammar rules or perfecting your accent. It's about getting out there and actually communicating.
Exactly. Think of it like learning to ride a bike.
Okay.
You can read all the manuals in the world, but you won't truly learn until you hop on and start pedaling.
Right.
The same goes for language learning. You have to immerse yourself in it and allow yourself to make mistakes.
And I love how many of the techniques they suggest are actually about having fun with English.
Yeah.
Whether it's singing along to your favorite songs, watching movies, or chatting with friends, it's about integrating the language into your life in a way that feels enjoyable and sustainable.
It shouldn't feel like a chore or a burden.
Right.
When you find joy in the process, you're more likely to stick with it and make real progress.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of English fluency, I have a good question for our listeners.
Okay.
Which of these techniques will you try first?
Yeah.
Will you challenge yourself to think in English throughout the day?
Yeah.
Or maybe you'll dust off those old textbooks and try shadowing for the first time.
Remember, the most important thing is to take action. Start small, be consistent, and most importantly, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Every stumble is a learning opportunity.
It's been such a fascinating exploration, and I hope this deep dive has inspired you to approach language learning with a renewed sense of curiosity and enthusiasm.
Keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep having fun with English.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep learning.